Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to GEEXX Reads. Today I want to talk about Venus in the Half Shell by Kilgore Trout. Now, the tagline for this book is Kilgore Trout's only published novel. The problem with that is Kilgore Trout isn't a real person. He doesn't exist. He shows up as a side character in some of Kurt Vonnegut's novels as a guy who has to sell short stories to dirty magazines just to get his work published, and no one ever actually reads his stuff. So you would think that Kurt Vonnegut would have written this book under a pseudonym, but he didn't. Philip Jose Farmer did, another science fiction author. And there's actually a bit of controversy around that too, in that Farmer actually asked Kurt Vonnegut if he could write the book, and Vonnegut agreed, but then someone later said that someone told Kurt Vonnegut that Farmer was going to write the book anyway, whether he got permission or not. So there was some like fighting back and forth between the two of them. And this is before I even talked about the story. So because of the character, the author not existing, the story kind of existed. This is actually kind of a piece of metafiction before the term ever even existed. This is just a weird little story. It is another very, very short book. I've been going through my short books lately just because it gives me something. Yeah, this book is like 204 pages long, but it allows me to get these book reviews out, to actually read the book before I do a review. I'm gonna have to dig into some of my thicker books soon. But on to the story itself. The story is about a guy named Simon Wagstaff. He is a survivor of the planet Earth, which was wiped out in a disaster. And he travels the universe in a Chinese spaceship. His only companions are a dog, an owl, and a female robot. You can guess what the female robot is programmed for by the picture. Anyway, Simon Wagstaff, survivor of Earth, space wanderer, electric banjo player, lover of alien women. This book is a hoot. It is just kind of off the wall. It is written as pulp trash, deliberately so. It is kind of an homage to all those pulpy, schlocky stories done as serialized fiction back in the old days of sci-fi and fantasy and adventure magazines. The best description I can give it is, if you've seen the film, what was that Tarantino film? Pulp Fiction, yeah. If you've seen Tarantino's film Pulp Fiction, and you know how just so over the top and deliberately over the top everything in that film is, it is deliberately kind of trashy, and just over exaggerated and over the top, and that's what this is. This is kind of done in the same vein. It's really exaggerated, written for us with a certain style and with a certain intent behind it. It is not intended to be a serious story. There are little bits of real philosophy thrown in there, not too much. But yeah, this guy just kind of wanders the cosmos, meeting sexy alien women and having adventures of those types. That's not all of it. There's other stuff too that happens. He runs into different alien cultures, and there's some commentary in there too, some kind of social commentary in that. He finds a planet where there is no jail. They just built a giant wall around a massive area and just throw people over the wall who are criminals. And how much money they save doing it that way. So I do have a criticism of the book, in that it does a lot of self-referential side stories. in that, like, something will happen, and then Simon will either remember or tell people about a story or movie or TV show that he read or watched or saw that reminds him of this current situation. So that it's like a little side piece to narrate, to kind of provide some sort of narration about what's going on in the story at the moment. And given that the story is only a couple hundred pages long, it's really unnecessary. It really doesn't add anything to the story. I find it kind of detracts from it. But having said that, I do thoroughly enjoy this story just because it is so goofy, and it doesn't take itself seriously, and it does it on purpose. Everything it does and says, it does intentionally. Its treatment of women is not necessarily the best, given that it was written in the early 70s. That can somewhat be expected. So take it with a grain of salt. There is also a lot more sex than I remembered. You know, when I read the book as a teenager, obviously I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it's not necessarily graphic. You know, there's a lot of innuendo. But it's a bit more blatant than I recall. That doesn't mean that's all there is to it, just that there's more of it than I remember. So take that into consideration as well. For me, this book kind of gets an A-, primarily because I enjoyed it so much. My few criticisms are they take up too much of the story, but the book is short, so it's not like they spend a lot of time doing this little side referential philosophizing. I would recommend this book. I know that they did reprint it with a different cover, which I think is a shame, although I can understand why they might not want this cover on bookshelves in this day and age, although I'm surprised they got away with it in 1975. Although I think the only reason they got away with it was because people didn't spend a lot of time in the science fiction and fantasy section of the store back in those days. And also, if you look at the cover artwork, look at the stuff that, the cover artists of the day were Boris Vallejo and Frank Frazetta, and they used a lot of nudity in their models and in their artwork. Love Frazetta and Vallejo. I would recommend it. It is very short. It's a fun read. It'll take you an afternoon, maybe 2 days. As always, thanks for watching. As always, my stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting.